Hello, welcome to a book talk at Book Place. Yeah. This is Book Talk at Book Place. And we are having a guest today who has authored a book that we are going to learn about. And with us in the studio today is Christopher Smith. Christopher Smith, welcome to the show, Christopher.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I got to your book on, now it's good that to clear up some things in the beginning. I got to your book, which is on Amazon, and I see it's CJ Hudson. Here you're Christopher Smith. Sorry, I didn't ask that before, but maybe we are going to learn it here in the episode.
No problem.
Yeah, so tell us, let us know about your name.
Well, like you said, my actual name is Christopher Smith, but my pen name is CJ Hudson. My CJ was a name that I've gone off since I was a kid, and Hudson is my mother's last name, so it just seemed to make sense. Been dealing with it for about 40-something years, so it's been around for a while, but it just seemed appropriate to be able to have that as my pen name.
Oh, wonderful. Now, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Christopher?
Well, I'm actually a physical therapist assistant. I work over at the Austin VA over in Austin, Texas. But I'm obviously an author. I just recently received a publishing deal for my book, Destiny Lives on Fairhaven Street, through Black Rose Writing Publishing. So been working on Destiny for about 4 years, on and off for about an hour every day in my car. It was written entirely on an iPhone, actually. And it's a story of how it's actually a story written to my sons. It's a memoir about how I ended 100 years of abuse in our family while trying to get back to the first woman I ever loved.
Wonderful. And you mentioned something interesting there to people who may be listening out there. It's about writing. And I've met a lot of people who have a book in themselves. Some people who say, yes, I want to write a book, but then I may not have the equipment. And I'm speaking because of people who are, some people who don't maybe have a computer, they don't have a program to write. They think there's a program, a special program that you have to use to write a book. And you say that you wrote it on your iPhone. That's interesting.
Yep. All you need, and in my case, what I have was Microsoft Word on my iPhone, and then Docs.
And then the others use the excuse of time. They say, I don't have the time to write because I'm working all day. And then, but yourself, you found time to write during lunch breaks, and you put up a whole book.
Exactly. And the only reason why it took 4 years is because I'm a perfectionist. So I would have had it done about half the time. But the problem was that it was, such a near and dear story to my heart. I wanted it to be as close to perfect as possible. And the problem I was running into it's not a problem per se, but it's just I obviously work full time, and I have a family at home with 2 kids. So my wife, she needs help. She needs, her due attention and everything else. So don't really have a whole lot of opportunity to be able to write. So you just have to do it when you can. And if it takes a long time, it takes a long time.
Wow. So this goes out to all the people who are listening or watching out there. You don't have to have an excuse of why you have not written your book, because you have a book and you can write it. If Christopher has written it, then you too can do it. Now, Destiny Lives on Fairhaven Street. This is the title of your book. It's a novel. You've written it addressed to your sons. And it's an interesting book for someone to read, and we would like to find out more. What is it all about? Destiny Lives on Fairhaven Street. Dive us into it, please.
Right. So it's a memoir. So it's all based, it actually happened. It was written by me.
Mhm.
On basically the 8-year journey that I went on to try and return back to the first woman I ever loved. As I previously said, I ended 100 years of abuse in that time. And obviously I came from a very abusive household. We ended up moving next door to this girl on Fairhaven Street, whose name was Danielle. And she and I connected. We became best friends. Eventually we fell in love. At 10 years old, we met, and we were together for about 3 years. So, and basically with what I was dealing with at home, Danielle was sort of the antithesis to that. When my parents would put me down, she would build me up. And so, it was a very, as I've been told, it was a very sweet and innocent kind of, romance. And then I was eventually forced apart from her because my parents got divorced and my mother took me out of state. And so I made a promise to her that I was going to come back for her when I grew up. So I gave her a heart pendant that snapped in half. She kept one half, I kept the other. And the story is of the 8-year journey that from that point forward until I returned to her, about how not only did I end 100 years of abuse, but I refused to date anyone. So my entire young adult life, I didn't date. I didn't go on my first date until I was 21 after I returned. And how I changed myself to make sure that the cycle of violence was broken, because there was no way that I was ever going to have her come back into my life if my family was still like that. I did not want her to go through that. It's a story to my kids about how things came to be the way they are. And it's gotten really good reviews. It's won 11 awards, actually. And as I mentioned, it was just picked up by a publisher.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Now, you've written it to your kids, but then your kids are going to read and someone else out there is going to read. Who would you very much want to read this book?
Well, the salesman in me says everyone. But I mean, this is a good old-fashioned romance. It's real. I think that's one of the main things that separates it from everything else. There are uncomfortable things that we talk about in there. They talk about abuse. For example, chapter 2 is the only chapter that I have in there that really goes over what happened with my father. But it's an underdog story. It's the kind of story that, especially in this day and age when we deal with relationships being disposable and, perhaps not taken seriously or not worth fighting for, that this is a good old-fashioned romance that I feel reminds people that relationships are worth fighting for. They're worth sacrificing for. So getting back to your question, romantics obviously are top of the list. People that love a good old-fashioned romance. And I actually explained this to my editor as well as the publisher. Everybody loves a romance, especially when it's real. One, unless they've somehow been able to get through life without ever having love in their life at all, has had a first love. And that's exactly what this is about, is the fact that not only, as I put it in the book, as I wrote to my children, the man you're destined to become is the one you choose to be. And that's the theme of the book. But also the other theme is that first love never dies. And that is so absolutely true. So, and we're also dealing with folks that also suffered from abuse. This is something else, because it goes back to what I just said. The person you choose to become is the one that you're destined to be. I've heard so many times in my life from people saying, well, this is my past. I don't have a choice. This is just how it is. This is how I ended up doing this horrible thing, or saying this horrible thing, or doing this. It's things like that that have always bothered me, because you always have a choice. And that's something that I really wanted to push to my children, to not allow their circumstances to dictate who they are. And for me, growing up, one of the things I desired most was control. I wanted control over my own life. And what I found is that by taking responsibility for everything that happened to me and realizing my role in it, I was able to change things, and I was successful at my goal. So those are the main groups of people I feel that's targeted towards.
Wow, that's good. Now, I had begun reading the book, although I didn't complete it. Maybe at some point I'm going to complete it. And I discovered, now going back to your name, CJ, is like you didn't like it in those early days. And then you still retain it, and it's your pen name. Now, tell us about about it. Why didn't you like it? And why did you still choose to go with it even today?
Well, I can answer the first part of the question. The second part, I'm gonna let you decide on that when you finish the book, because the end of the book explains that.
Oh, okay.
But in the beginning of the book, it talks about how my father basically decided that my name was CJ, and that's just how it was. He hated the name Chris, and you're going to be called this whether you want to or not. So naturally, I rebelled against it. I didn't like it, didn't want to deal with it. To me, that represented a person who was abused, who was weak, didn't have any confidence. And then as I grew up and I grew older and I became this different person, I didn't want to be referred to as CJ. So, and the book is in addition to the journey I mentioned before, is also the journey to kind of accept who I am and say, okay, well, you know what? There's nothing wrong with CJ. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But as I said before, the book explains exactly why I became CJ Hudson. So you'll have to read it to find out.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And everybody who is out there, go and get the book and find out the link between CJ and Christopher Smith that we are having here on our show today. Now, it's good that you share some important lessons out there. And I want to find out, because the world today is upside down, and especially on issues romance. We don't have long-lasting relationships that actually end up in marriage. Our marriages are breaking every single day. Now, I want to find out maybe some of the tips that you would give to the listener. How can they keep it real and keep it going? And those some of the ideas maybe that they are going to find in the book.
You mean as far as keeping romance alive, that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know. I consider myself an expert in keeping romance alive. I've been with my wife for 16 years, and it just takes a lot of patience, more patience than you can probably realize.
Mm-hmm.
Not only patience, but also the desire to work things out. And there are times where it seems hopeless. There are times when it seems like, why should we continue? You have to find that reason to continue. I think it's part of the problem with our society. Like you said, where everything's going crazy right now, because I think especially with marriage, people are quick to give up. They're quick to just throw their hands up, say, it didn't work out, we're done. That's it. I'm just going to go get someone else. People are not interchangeable toys. They're not interchangeable pieces of a machine. They're human beings. And for me, with my wife, I wanted to woo her. I wanted to do the old-fashioned thing where we waited for marriage. And it's like we were together for almost 4 years before we got engaged. And we lived together for a time. And it was something that I knew that I wanted to get right. I didn't want to mess it up. So we weren't in any hurry to jump into it. And it's like any other marriage. It's got its ups and downs. You're going to have issues. You're going to have conflicts. That's just how it is. But the thing, in my opinion, that separates the adults from the children is the fact that the adults work it out. The adults figure out how can we fix this, because this is worth saving. So, for example, we had issues. I'm kind of delving into book 2 here a little bit here, but we had issues with my boys where we were having problems conceiving. So we were able to finally do that, but that took a few years. So, and it put a little bit of a strain on the marriage, but we decided we're going to hunker down. We're going to figure this out. We're going to get through it. And now we have 2 beautiful boys. So it luckily worked out for us. But overall, it just comes down to just making it work and really just taking your time, getting to know the person, and just saying, okay, can you honestly see yourself with this person in 20 years when they've gained weight, when they probably let themselves go a little bit? Are you okay with that? And if the answer is no, then you need to seriously reevaluate before you take that leap.
And is that idea in the book, or is coming out in book 2?
It's kind of coming out in book 2. I don't really talk about marriage in the first book because it's from the ages of about 10 to about 21. So I really didn't know anything about marriage except how not to do it. But book 2 really starts to go into, marriage and how you make things work, struggling with depression, which is perfectly normal in every person. So book one is the dreamy, I want to get married one day, I want to have kids, and here's this beautiful girl, I want to be with her and only her, and oh, now I'm getting attention from other women, but I want to be with this girl still. That kind of thing. It's the dreamy romance.
That's beautiful. And how often now, because things change now and again, do you still write it over lunch hour, or have you found another way of going about it?
I do. I may end up shifting over to a computer. I don't know, because I don't want to end up with arthritis in my fingers. But yeah, because writing on an iPhone is challenging. It's not the most user-friendly device when it comes to writing prolonged things, and I think they designed it that way. So I'll probably get shipped over to a computer, but this is really the best time for me to write is at lunch at work, because we got an hour, I can just relax, I can just go out to the car and do my thing. My biggest thing is just not being rushed. That's the big thing. And I think writers, that's what it is, because when you're rushed, your quality of your work is just not there, and it's just not hitting where you want it to hit. So yeah, I'm going to keep doing as much as I can.
Well, now talking about your writing time and writing style and everything. Now, for those who are coming, we are talking about Destiny Lives on Fairhaven Street by C.J. Hudson, otherwise known as Christopher Smith. And I want to find out now if there is something really that you want the listener to know about this book before we even get to end the episode. Something more.
This book is not for the faint of heart. And what I mean by that is that it does talk about some things that are uncomfortable for some people to go over. For example, like I said, chapter 2 talks about being abused by my father. It was last night that he was with us, and then after that it stopped. But I think what's most important, and I say this in the beginning of the book, is that for those people who are willing to look past those discomforts, those situations that they're not quite sure how to handle, it really is a reminder that love can conquer all things. And to me, that's so important. And it was important for me to be graphic with this, as graphic as possible, as long as I was being honest, because not because of other people, but because of my children. Because what I did was a double-edged sword, because while it's great that they were never abused, neither was my wife, they never had to deal with that. They never had to deal with that. So what I mean by that is that they don't know how it impacts people. So to me, when I die, I want the cycle to remain broken. So my goal was to be as graphic as possible. When I die, I want the cycle to remain broken. So my goal was to be as graphic as possible. When I die, I want the cycle to remain broken. So my goal was to be as graphic as possible.
Sorry. Sorry, we're checking who are with us, and yeah, let's keep going. So continue.
So to wrap it up, I wanted to make sure that they understood not only how bad it was, but also how it impacted me. And that's the whole point of the series, is for them to see, your dad was screwed up, but he turned out okay in the end. And that's the most important thing. So yeah, it's graphic. It talks about death. It talks about things that people may not be comfortable with, but it's worth it. It's worth it, because even when things don't quite work out the way you think they should, or they want to, or the way you want to, you can still end up with the life you've always wanted.
Wow, that's a great message. And I think it goes with what just happened 30 seconds ago. Things go wrong, and then you've got to come back on trail and keep on moving and keep doing it right. Exactly. So whatever goes wrong, you can always correct it. You can always come back to it. Now, if there is someone that you've been separated with, you can stay 11 years and come back. You can stay 20 years and come back and keep it going. If there is something that is not working, you can always come back and make it work. Take that from Christopher Smith as we are addressing his book, Destiny Lives on Fairhaven Street. And it's wonderful. We thank you for sharing with us your story in the book. And we ask the people to go and get the book. The link is shared in the description of this video as we are live, and also after we are through with it, it's gonna be there in the description. So you can follow the link and go get the book. Yeah, read it, share it with your friends.
Please do.
Yeah. We really appreciate, and thank you very much. So we are now coming to the end of this episode, and I'll ask Christopher to leave us. Now, you've shared quite much with us, a lot of insight. And we want to go and read the book, find out about how you chose to remain with your CJ pen name. We want to find out a few more tips of how to get to hold on to something for years and years until it becomes real. So you shared quite much with us. So at this point, I want to ask you, what few words, like one sentence, would you want us not to ever lose, always to remember? Which are those words?
Well, it's two things, actually. I'm going to cheat a little bit. The person you're destined to become is the one you choose to be, and never, ever give up.
Okay, the person you become is the person you choose to be. So whoever is listening, who was watching out there, be the person that you want to be. It's a decision, it's a commitment, and you can do it. Thank you very much. That has been Book Talk at Book Place with our guest, Christopher Smith. We are saying bye for now. Bye.
Bye.